The unexpected encounter. The vast emptiness of space was calm, with stars shining like distant beacons. The Zorvan fleet, a terrifying collection of warships, moved silently through the void. Their ships were sleek and massive, armed with weapons that had destroyed countless civilizations. For the Zorvans, war was a way of life, and conquest was their ultimate goal. The fleet commander, General HFY, sat in his command chair, his sharp green eyes scanning the holographic display in front of him. The Zorvans were undefeated, and he expected no surprises on this routine patrol. Suddenly, the silence was broken. "Commander, we have detected an unidentified vessel," a Zorvan officer reported. Her voice held a hint of confusion. "It appears to be human." "Human?" General HFY frowned. "Those primitive creatures. How could one of their ships have entered our territory?" The hologram flickered, displaying a single human ship. It was much smaller than the Zorvan warships and appeared fragile by comparison. Its gray surface was plain, lacking the intimidating designs of Zorvan ships. "Scan it," HFY ordered. "Find out what they're doing here." The officer nodded and initiated the scan. Within moments, a puzzled look appeared on her face. "Sir, their technology is unusual. I cannot get a clear reading." HFY leaned forward. "Unusual how?" "It's almost as if they are hiding their systems from us. Our sensors cannot penetrate their defenses." The general's lips curled into a sneer. "No matter. They are weak. Destroy them and be done with it." The Zorvan fleet turned its weapons toward the lone human vessel, giant cannons charged with energy, glowing brightly as they locked onto their target. The fleet was ready to fire when, suddenly, the human ship disappeared. "Where did it go?" HFY demanded, his voice sharp with anger. The officers scrambled to check their scanners. "It's gone, sir. It vanished from all systems." "That's impossible." HFY slammed his fist on the armrest. "No ship can escape Zorvan tracking." The tension in the command room grew as seconds passed. Then, without warning, the human ship reappeared. This time, it was behind the Zorvan fleet, well within firing range. "Commander," an officer shouted, "it's back, and it's targeting us." Before HFY could respond, a beam of blue light shot from the human ship. It struck one of the smaller Zorvan warships. The Zorvan shields, designed to withstand any attack, flickered and collapsed in an instant. The human weapon had pierced through effortlessly. The stricken warship floated lifelessly in space, its engines dead, and its crew panicked. HFY stared at the scene, his mind racing. How could this happen? No species had ever bypassed Zorvan shields so easily. "Raise our defenses," HFY barked. "Prepare all ships to attack." As the Zorvan fleet scrambled to respond, a calm voice echoed through their communication system. It was a human voice, steady and confident. "Zorvan fleet, this is Commander Alex Carter of the United Earth Alliance. You are trespassing in restricted space. Leave now or face the consequences." The room fell silent. HFY's officers exchanged uneasy glances. It was unthinkable for a species as primitive as humanity to issue a warning like this. HFY's sneer returned, but this time it was forced. "Do they think they can intimidate us? Prepare to fire. Destroy them now." But as the Zorvan fleet charged its weapons, the human ship disappeared again. This time, it moved with such speed that their scanners struggled to keep up. It darted between the massive warships, evading every attempt to lock onto it. "How are they doing this?" one officer whispered, fear creeping into her voice. HFY ignored her, his focus on the battle. "Track their movements. Do not let them escape." The human ship fired again, disabling another Zorvan vessel. The once mighty fleet was beginning to look vulnerable. HFY clenched his fists. This was no ordinary encounter. The humans were not the helpless creatures he had expected. For the first time in his long career, General HFY felt a hint of doubt. Who were these humans, and how had they developed such advanced technology? The Zorvan Empire had crushed countless species, but this was different. The human ship reappeared directly in front of the Zorvan flagship. Its sleek, unassuming design belied the power it wielded. Hlavar stared at it, his anger giving way to something unfamiliar, unease. Then, the voice of Commander Carter returned, calm but firm. "This is your final warning. Leave, or we will ensure you cannot return." The Zorvan officers looked to their general for orders, their fear evident. But Hlavar's mind was in turmoil. The humans were more than they seemed. Much more. As the human ship powered its weapons, the story of this unexpected encounter was only beginning. Humanity's first strike. The Zorvan flagship's control room was tense. General Hlavar gripped the armrests of his chair, his eyes locked on the holographic image of the human ship. It hovered silently, its small size almost mocking the colossal Zorvan warships surrounding it. No species had ever dared to challenge the Zorvans, yet here was this lone vessel, fearless and untouchable. "Commander," a Zorvan officer said, her voice breaking the silence. "Should we retreat?" "Their technology." "Retreat?" Hlavar snapped, glaring at her. "We are the Zorvan Empire. Retreat is not an option." He turned back to the display. "Prepare the plasma grid. I want that ship destroyed." The plasma grid was a weapon system unlike any other. It created an inescapable web of energy, designed to obliterate anything within its radius. The Zorkans had used it to wipe out entire fleets in past battles. As the massive grid began to power up, Hlavar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had played their hand, and now they would pay the price. But then, something unexpected happened. "Commander," another officer called out, panic in his voice. "The human ship, it's moving toward the grid." Hlavar frowned. "Toward it? They must be suicidal." The human ship darted forward, accelerating at a speed the Zorvans hadn't anticipated. The plasma grid fired, unleashing a brilliant web of energy. The Zorvans watched, expecting the human ship to be caught and destroyed. Instead, the human ship performed an impossible maneuver. It twisted and turned, moving through the gaps in the plasma web with precision that defied logic. The Zorvans stared in disbelief as the ship emerged unscathed, its movements almost mocking the massive grid. "It's evading the grid," the officer stammered. "No ship can move like that." Hlavar's rage boiled over. How are they doing this? Fire all weapons. Overwhelm them. The Zorvan fleet unleashed its full arsenal. Missiles, energy beams, and plasma torpedoes filled the void of space, all aimed at the tiny human vessel. But the ship was too fast, too agile. It weaved through the storm of firepower, leaving the Zorvans scrambling to keep up. Then the human ship struck. With a single, calculated shot, it targeted the Zorvan fleet's central communication hub. The beam of blue energy sliced through the hub's defenses, shutting down the Zorvans' ability to coordinate their attack. Chaos erupted as ships lost contact with one another, their formations falling apart. Inside the flagship, Hlavar slammed his fist on the console. Impossible. How can one ship cripple an entire fleet? Before anyone could answer, the human ship transmitted another message. This time, the voice was sharper, colder. "You thought humanity was weak. You were wrong. Stand down, or we will destroy you." The Zorvan officers exchanged uneasy glances. Hlavar's reputation as an unyielding leader was legendary, but even he could see the cracks forming in his crew's confidence. The human ship was not just winning. It was humiliating them. Desperation replaced arrogance. Hlavar barked new orders. "Activate the fleet's secondary systems. They cannot possibly counter everything." But the humans had planned for this. As the Zorvans activated their secondary weapons, the human ship unleashed a new attack. This time, it deployed small, spherical drones that swarmed the fleet. Each drone emitted a concentrated electromagnetic pulse, frying the systems of any Zorvan ship it touched. One by one, The mighty Zorvan warships went dark, their engines and weapons rendered useless. The once dominant fleet now floated helplessly in space, vulnerable and exposed. On the bridge of the flagship, the silence was deafening. HFY's officers avoided his gaze, their faces pale with fear. For centuries, the Zorvans had been the predators of the galaxy. Now, they were the prey. The human ship transmitted a final message, its voice calm but filled with unmistakable authority. This is the power of humanity. We do not seek war, but we will not tolerate threats. Leave our space and tell your empire we are not afraid. The transmission ended, and the human ship disappeared into the darkness, its job done. The Zorvan fleet, battered and humiliated, had no choice but to retreat. For the first time in their history, the Zorvans had been defeated, not by numbers, but by strategy, precision, and a species they had dismissed as insignificant. As the Zorvan flagship limped back to its homeworld, HFY sat in silence. His mind replayed the events, trying to understand how one small ship had outmatched the galaxy's greatest fleet. He knew one thing for certain. The Zorvans would never look at humanity the same way again. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had just shown it would not be ignored. The Zorvan retaliation. The Zorvan fleet limped back to their base in the dense nebulous system, their once pristine warships now scared and silent. General HFY, his reputation tarnished, stormed into the central command hall, where the Zorvan High Council awaited him. The council chamber, carved from a massive black crystal, radiated authority. The towering councilors, draped in ceremonial robes, glared at HFY as he took his place in the center of the room. "You've allowed a single human ship to disgrace our empire," snarled Councilor Drax, his sharp features twisting with contempt. "Explain yourself." HFY clenched his fists, his pride wounded. "Their technology is beyond anything we have encountered. Their tactics, unpredictable. We were unprepared." Councilor Varen, the eldest of the group, leaned forward, her voice calm but piercing. "Unprepared. We are the Zorvan Empire. No species surpasses us in warfare. You failed because you underestimated them." HFY bowed his head slightly, swallowing his anger. "Give me another chance, and I will erase this humiliation. I will bring the full might of the Empire against humanity." The councilors exchanged glances before nodding. Councilor Drax's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Very well, General. You will lead the retaliation, but fail us again, and you will not return." Far across the galaxy, humanity was not resting. In the United Earth Alliance's hidden command center on Titan, Commander Alex Carter stood before a massive holographic map of the Zorvan fleet's known positions. Around him, a team of officers analyzed data streams and crafted strategies. "The Zorvans won't let this go," Carter said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "They'll come back, and next time, they'll bring more firepower." Admiral Lin, a veteran strategist, nodded. "That's why we need to be ready. Our stealth ships can't face their entire fleet in open combat." Carter smirked. "We won't need to. Let them come. We'll show them what it means to fight humanity on our terms." The Zorvan retaliation began 2 weeks later. HFY led a fleet triple the size of the one that had been defeated, each ship bristling with upgraded weaponry and countermeasures designed to neutralize human tactics. The fleet's objective was simple: crush humanity and send a message to the galaxy. "We've detected a massive Zorvan fleet entering the Helios sector," reported a young officer in Titan's command center. "Their trajectory suggests they're heading straight for Earth." Carter studied the data. "They're coming in full force." "Good. It's time we gave them a proper welcome." Humanity's response was swift. Instead of waiting for the Zorvans to reach Earth, Carter ordered a preemptive strike. The fleet of stealth ships, equipped with advanced cloaking technology, moved to intercept the Zorvans in the uncharted Vortex Nebula, a treacherous region of space filled with gravitational anomalies. As the Zorvan fleet entered the nebula, their sensors began to falter. The dense clouds of gas and the erratic gravitational fields played havoc with their systems. HFY, seated on the bridge of his flagship, felt a flicker of unease. "Status report," he demanded. "Our sensors are struggling to maintain a lock on the human ships." An officer replied. "The nebula is interfering with our systems." Sci-Fi growled. "Then flush them out. Fire into the nebula. Make it impossible for them to hide." The Zorvan ships unleashed a barrage of energy blasts into the swirling clouds. The nebula lit up with flashes of light, but the human ships remained unseen. Then, one by one, the Zorvan ships began to fall silent. "Commander, we've lost contact with 3 ships." An officer shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "How?" Tyvar barked. "What's happening?" "They're being disabled by precision strikes. The humans are. Everywhere." The human fleet, using the nebula's chaotic environment to their advantage, launched coordinated attacks on the Zorvan ships. Cloaked by the nebula's interference, they struck from angles the Zorvans couldn't anticipate. Small, automated drones infiltrated Zorvan ships, disabling their weapons and communications systems from within. On board one Zorvan warship, the crew scrambled as their systems went dark. Sparks flew from shattered consoles, and the lights flickered ominously. A Zorvan officer shouted into a broken communicator, "We're under attack. We can't see them." Back on the Zorvan flagship, HFY's frustration turned to dread as he realized the trap he had walked into. The humans were not just fighting. They were dismantling his fleet piece by piece. "Withdraw," he finally ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "Get us out of this cursed nebula." But it was too late. The human ships had surrounded the flagship. HFY watched in stunned silence as the lead human vessel decloaked, its sleek design a stark contrast to the hulking Zorvan warships. The humans transmitted a message, the voice of Commander Carter ringing through the Zorvan bridge. "You brought your entire fleet. And still, you failed. Your arrogance is your weakness, General. Leave now, or you won't leave at all." Sci-Fi's pride battled with the reality of his situation. The Zorvan Empire's greatest fleet had been reduced to ruins by a species they had once considered beneath them. With no other option, he gave the order to retreat. As the remnants of the Zorvan fleet limped away from the nebula, Carter's voice echoed in Sci-Fi's mind. "Your empire has no place here. Humanity will not bow." The Zorvan's second defeat sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Word spread quickly. Humanity was no longer a fledgling species. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they had just brought the mighty Zorvan Empire to its knees. The secret weapon. The Zorvan fleet retreated, battered and broken, leaving trails of debris scattered across the Vortex Nebula. General HFY, now back aboard the crippled flagship, paced the command deck, his mind racing. His pride was shattered, but worse than that was the realization that humanity was not only dangerous but also unpredictable. "We underestimated them," HFY muttered under his breath, his claws tapping rhythmically on the console. Twice. He turned to his officers, their faces pale with fear. "Summon reinforcements from the High Command. Tell them we're deploying the Oblivion Sphere." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. The Oblivion Sphere was the Zorvan Empire's most powerful weapon, one they had never used. It was a planetary annihilator, designed to crush resistance by destroying entire worlds. Deploying it would send a message to humanity and the galaxy. The Zorvans were still the ultimate power. On Titan, Commander Alex Carter stood in the strategy room, holograms of the Zorvan fleet flickering in the air around him. The victory in the nebula had been decisive, but he knew the Zorvans wouldn't stop. He could feel it, the calm before the storm. "They'll come back," Carter said, his voice steady. "And this time, they'll bring something far worse." Admiral Lin nodded. "We've intercepted fragments of Zorvan communications. They're mobilizing their most devastating weapon. If they deploy it, Earth and every human colony could be wiped out." Carter's jaw tightened. We can't wait for them to strike. We need to find the Oblivion Sphere and disable it before they reach us. The Oblivion Sphere was not just a weapon. It was a massive station, the size of a small moon, armed with an array of planet-killing cannons. It moved slowly but methodically, escorted by a fleet of warships. At its core was a device capable of generating energy so destructive it could tear through a planet's crust and obliterate all life. As the Zorvans prepared for their final strike, humanity's stealth fleet mobilized. Carter led the operation personally, aboard the Eclipse, the most advanced stealth ship in the United Earth Alliance. Their mission: infiltrate the Oblivion Sphere and disable it before it could fire. The human fleet reached the edges of the Zorvan escort. The Eclipse and its sister ships activated their cloaking systems, vanishing from sight as they slipped through the enemy defenses. The Zorvans, confident in their overwhelming power, didn't notice the intruders. Carter stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, his eyes locked on the holographic display of the massive weapon. "This thing makes the Death Star look like a toy," he murmured. Admiral Lin's voice crackled over the comms. "We've identified the core. It's heavily shielded, but there's a ventilation shaft leading to the power generator." Carter smirked. "Of course there is. Let's make it count." The infiltration team, a group of elite human operatives, boarded the Oblivion Sphere under the cover of the stealth fleet. The corridors were vast, designed for the towering Zorvan soldiers, but the humans moved swiftly, using their smaller size to their advantage. They planted explosives along critical points of the station's systems, aiming to disable its weapons and engines. As the team worked, alarms blared. The Zorvans had detected their presence. "They found us," one operative shouted over the comms. "Stay on target." Carter's voice came through. "We need that generator disabled, or this mission fails." The Zorvans launched a counterattack. Elite soldiers stormed the corridors, engaging the human operatives in brutal combat. The humans fought back with precision, their advanced weaponry and training allowing them to hold their ground. But the odds were against them. Back on the Eclipse, Carter monitored the situation. The operatives were outnumbered, but they were close to completing their mission. "Commander," an officer said, "we've detected an energy buildup in the Oblivion Sphere. They're preparing to fire." Carter's heart raced. The Zorvans were accelerating their attack. There was no time to wait. "Send in the drones," Carter ordered. "We need to buy them more time." The Eclipse launched a swarm of combat drones, which descended on the Zorvan fleet like a cloud of angry bees. The drones targeted the warship's engines and weapons systems, creating chaos and diverting the Zorvans' attention from the infiltrators. Inside the Oblivion Sphere, the operatives reached the generator room. The massive core pulsed with energy, its glow lighting up the dark chamber. The lead operative, Captain Reyna, planted the final charges around the core. "Charges are set," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We're ready to detonate." "Good work," Carter replied. "Get out of there." The operatives began their retreat, but the Zorvans were relentless. As the team fought their way back to the extraction point, Reyna stayed behind, covering their escape. "We won't make it in time," one operative shouted. Reyna smiled grimly. "You will. Get to the ship." The operatives escaped just as the charges detonated. The Oblivion Sphere trembled, its core erupting in a brilliant explosion. The shockwave tore through the station, disabling its systems and rendering it useless. The human fleet regrouped, watching as the Zorvan warships retreated once again. Humanity had done the impossible, destroyed the Zorvans' ultimate weapon, and survived. Back on Titan, Carter stood before his team, the glow of victory tempered by the cost. "We've won a battle," he said, "but the war is far from over. The Zorvans won't stop, and neither will we. Humanity doesn't back down." The galaxy was changing, and humanity had just proven that even the mightiest empires could fall. The turning point. The remains of the Oblivion Sphere drifted through space, a silent monument to humanity's defiance. The Zorvan Empire, humiliated and infuriated, convened an emergency council on their homeworld, Zorvan Prime. The Great Chamber, carved into the planet's largest mountain, was filled with the Empire's most powerful leaders. General HFY stood before the council, his expression a mix of shame and defiance. The destruction of the Oblivion Sphere had not only damaged their fleet, but also their reputation. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy had seen the Zorvans lose. The council was divided. Some demanded immediate retaliation, while others questioned if the humans were too dangerous to confront directly. This was no accident, HFY argued, his voice echoing through the chamber. The humans are not just skilled, they are relentless. They will not stop until they are safe, or until we are destroyed. Councillor Varin leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Are you suggesting we negotiate with these upstarts? That we lower ourselves to the level of those we once called prey? No, HFY replied, his voice firm. I'm suggesting we face reality. We underestimated them before. We cannot afford to do so again. Varin scoffed. You propose a show of strength. HFY hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but not through brute force. We need to understand their tactics and exploit their weaknesses. Meanwhile, on Earth, the United Earth Alliance celebrated their victory. But Commander Alex Carter and his team remained cautious. The Zorvans' retreat was temporary. They all knew the Empire wouldn't stay quiet for long. Carter gathered his senior officers in the Alliance War Room, a high-tech facility deep beneath the surface. A holographic map of the galaxy floated before them, showing the Zorvan fleet's last known positions. They're regrouping, Admiral Lin said, gesturing to the map. And they're angry. We can expect an attack soon, possibly with a new strategy. Carter nodded. They'll want to regain their dominance. But we have something they don't. Adaptability. The Zorvans are predictable. They rely on their strength and technology, but we use creativity and unpredictability. A young intelligence officer, Lieutenant Vega, chimed in. We've intercepted new Zorvan communications. They're consolidating their forces in the Thalax cluster. It's a staging area for their next offensive. Carter's eyes narrowed. If they're gathering there, it's our chance to strike before they're ready. A preemptive assault could cripple their operations. As the humans prepared for their next move, the Zorvans launched a covert operation of their own. Using advanced infiltration technology, they sent a team of operatives to Earth. Their mission was simple: gather intelligence on humanity's defenses and, if possible, sabotage their war efforts. The Zorvan operatives, disguised as merchants from a neutral species, infiltrated the bustling spaceport on Luna, Earth's primary orbital hub. They blended in, gathering data and planting devices to monitor human communications. But humanity's counterintelligence teams, always alert, detected anomalies. In a quiet corner of the spaceport, a human security agent cornered one of the operatives. The alien, realizing they had been discovered, tried to fight back, but the human was prepared. A brief but intense skirmish ensued, ending with the Zorvan operative subdued. The captured Zorvan was taken to a high-security facility, where human scientists and strategists worked to extract information. What they learned was both alarming and intriguing. The Zorvans were experimenting with a new type of weapon, one designed to disrupt human stealth technology. Carter called an emergency meeting. The revelation of the Zorvan weapon was a turning point. If deployed, it could neutralize humanity's greatest advantage. This changes everything, Carter said, pacing in front of the holographic display. We've been winning because of our ability to outmaneuver them. If they take that away, we're at risk. Admiral Lin spoke up. We need to act now. Destroy their research facilities before they finish the weapon. Lieutenant Vega added, the Thalax cluster isn't just their staging area. It's where they're developing this weapon. If we hit it hard enough, we can take out their fleet and their weapon in one strike. The human fleet mobilized, moving through uncharted sectors to avoid detection. The operation was codenamed Iron Dagger, a surgical strike meant to cripple the Zorvans where it hurt most. As the fleet approached the Thalax cluster, Carter addressed his crew. "This mission will define the future of humanity. The Zorvins think they can crush us with brute force, but we'll show them what it means to fight for survival." The fleet's stealth ships moved silently into the cluster, their cloaking systems blending with the shadows of asteroid fields and nebulae. The Zorvin staging area came into view, a massive orbital station surrounded by warships. At its center was the weapon they had feared, a massive array designed to emit waves that could disrupt stealth technology. Carter gave the order, "Engage." The battle that followed was unlike any the galaxy had seen. The Zorvins, caught off guard, scrambled to defend their station, but the humans were relentless. Using decoys, precision strikes, and unconventional tactics, they dismantled the Zorvin defenses piece by piece. The Eclipse led the charge, targeting the weapon's core. Carter himself guided the final strike, his ship weaving through heavy fire to deliver the payload. The weapon exploded in a brilliant flash, taking much of the station with it. As the dust settled, the human fleet regrouped. The Zorvins had suffered another crushing defeat, but this one felt different. It wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was thriving under pressure. On board the Eclipse, Carter stood by the viewing port, watching the remnants of the Zorvin station fade into the distance. He knew the war wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt like humanity had the upper hand. The turning point had arrived. The Zorvins, once the galaxy's supreme power, were now facing an opponent they couldn't predict or overpower, and humanity, defiant and unyielding, was ready for whatever came next. Humanity's tactical brilliance. The galaxy stood on edge. News of humanity's audacious strike against the Zorvins in the Thalax cluster spread like wildfire. For centuries, the Zorvins had been the galaxy's unchallenged overlords, feared by all. But now, whispers of a new power, bold, cunning, and relentless, rippled through the stars. On Zorvin Prime, General Exivar faced the High Council once more. His once commanding presence was diminished, but his voice was resolute. "The humans are not winning because they are stronger," Exivar began, addressing the skeptical council. "They are winning because they think differently. Their strategies are not bound by tradition or arrogance. They adapt, they innovate, and they strike where we least expect." Councillor Varen, her tone icy, replied, "Are you suggesting we abandon our ways? That we stoop to their level of chaos?" Saivar's eyes burned with frustration. "I am suggesting we stop underestimating them. Their strength lies in their unpredictability. If we do not evolve, we will fall." Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was preparing for the next stage of the conflict. Commander Alex Carter stood in the Alliance's War Command, a sprawling room filled with holograms of enemy movements, fleet data, and strategic plans. Admiral Lin gestured to the latest intel. "The Zorvins are consolidating their forces in the Nexus expanse. They've fortified their position, using asteroid fields and natural gravitational anomalies as barriers." Carter studied the map, his mind racing. The Zorvins' strategy was clear: build an impenetrable fortress and bake humanity into a direct confrontation, where their superior firepower would overwhelm the Alliance. "They want us to play their game," Carter said, a small smile forming. "We won't." Lieutenant Vega chimed in. "What's the plan, sir?" "We'll outthink them, hit them where they don't expect it, and force them to dismantle their own defenses. The setup, decoys, and deception. The plan, codenamed Phantom Storm, relied on misdirection and unconventional tactics. The Alliance deployed decoy fleets to the edges of the Nexus expanse, creating the illusion of a large-scale assault. The Zorvins responded predictably, shifting their fleet formations to counter the perceived threat. At the same time, smaller human strike teams infiltrated the expanse, using stealth ships. Their mission: sabotage critical systems on Zorvin ships and installations. On board the Eclipse, Carter monitored the operation. The decoys worked perfectly, drawing Zorvin ships into vulnerable positions. "Admiral," Carter said. Initiate the second phase. Phase 2. Sabotage and chaos. The human infiltration teams, equipped with EMP charges and hacking devices, began their work. They disabled shield generators, overloaded weapon systems, and disrupted communications across the Zorvan fleet. The once coordinated empire now faced chaos within its own ranks. In one dramatic moment, a Zorvan warship turned its weapons on its own fleet, its systems hijacked by human operatives. The resulting confusion sent ripples through the Zorvan command structure. General HFY, watching from his flagship, clenched his fists. They're dismantling us from the inside. An officer turned to him, panicked. What are your orders, sir? Sci-Fi's voice was cold. Regroup the fleet. Pull back to defensive positions and prepare for countermeasures. Phase 3. The trap. As the Zorvans scrambled to regain control, humanity sprung its trap. The main human fleet, hidden within the asteroid fields, emerged behind the Zorvan formation. The Alliance had used the same natural barriers the Zorvans relied on to mask their approach. The Eclipse led the charge, its sleek design cutting through space like a blade. Carter's voice echoed through the fleet's comms. Focus fire on their command ships. Cut the head off the serpent. The battle was swift and decisive. The Zorvans, already disorganized, struggled to respond. Human ships exploited every weakness, their movements coordinated yet unpredictable. The Zorvans' firepower was unmatched, but it was useless without direction. A critical decision. On board the Zorvan flagship, General HFY faced a grim reality. His fleet was collapsing, and his forces were demoralized. For the first time, he questioned the Zorvan way. Sir, an officer said hesitantly, we can still retreat. Sci-Fi's gaze hardened. No, retreat is not an option. But even as he spoke, another voice rang out across the Zorvan fleet. It was Carter, broadcasting a message to both sides. General HFY, this is Commander Alex Carter of the United Earth Alliance. Surrender, and we will spare your remaining ships. Continue, and you risk total annihilation. The Zorvan officers turned to HFY, waiting for his response. The once proud general sat in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Victory and reflection. The battle ended with the Zorvans in retreat, their fleet scattered and their morale shattered. Humanity had achieved its most significant victory yet, not just by outgunning the Zorvans, but by outthinking them. As the human fleet regrouped, Carter stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, staring at the distant remnants of the Zorvan armada. We didn't win because we were stronger, he said quietly. We won because we were willing to adapt. That's what makes us dangerous. Far away, on Zorvan Prime, General HFY returned to the High Council. This time, he carried no excuses, only a warning. The humans are unlike any enemy we have faced, he said. They are not bound by tradition or fear. If we do not change, they will destroy us. The council was silent, their arrogance tempered by the weight of his words. Humanity had proven its brilliance, and for the first time, the Zorvan Empire faced the prospect of defeat, not just in battle, but in the war itself. A new galactic order. The Zorvan Empire, once the galaxy's unchallenged ruler, was now a shadow of its former self. Their defeat in the Nexus Expanse had shaken their foundations. Across the stars, species that once cowered under Zorvan domination began to stir. Humanity's victories had not only weakened the Zorvans, but inspired hope in the oppressed. Zorvan Prime, a fractured empire. In the great chamber of Zorvan Prime, the High Council gathered in desperation. General HFY stood at the center, his once imposing presence now weighed down by the Empire's decline. The humans have done more than defeat us, HFY said, his voice grim. They've exposed our arrogance. We believed our strength was absolute, but strength without adaptability is weakness. Councillor Varin, once a staunch advocate of Zorvan supremacy, looked shaken. What are you suggesting? That we negotiate with them? I suggest survival, HFY replied. The humans don't seek to conquer. They fight only when provoked. If we persist, they will destroy us. The council fell silent. The Zorvans had never considered diplomacy with a lesser species, but humanity was no longer lesser. Earth, humanity's message to the stars. On Earth, the United Earth Alliance celebrated cautiously. Humanity's leaders knew their victories were historic, but understood the war was far from over. Commander Alex Carter addressed the Alliance Assembly, his voice calm yet resolute. Today, we stand not just as survivors, but as equals on the galactic stage. We have shown the galaxy that strength is not measured by the size of an armada, but by the will to adapt and the courage to fight for freedom. Carter paused, letting the weight of his words settle. But this war is not just about humanity. It's about breaking the chains of oppression that have bound so many. The Zorvans sought to dominate the galaxy, but now we have the chance to unite it. An unexpected proposal. Days later, a Zorvan emissary arrived at Earth's borders under a flag of truce. It was the first time in recorded history that the Zorvans had approached another species without demands. The emissary was escorted to Titan, where the Alliance's leaders and Carter awaited. The Zorvan representative, a tall figure clad in ceremonial armor, bowed, a gesture no human expected. I am Emissary Urak, sent by the High Council of Zorvan Prime. I come with a proposal and an apology. Carter raised an eyebrow. An apology? Urak hesitated, then nodded. We underestimated you. Your strength lies not in your weapons, but in your resolve. The Council wishes to avoid further conflict. We propose an armistice. The room buzzed with whispers. Carter held up a hand, silencing them. And what does the Zorvan Empire want in return? Peace, Urak replied, and a chance to rebuild without further losses. The galaxy responds. News of the armistice spread rapidly. Species that had suffered under Zorvan rule saw humanity as a beacon of hope. Alliances began to form, with former Zorvan subjects pledging support to the United Earth Alliance. The galaxy, once fragmented and fearful, began to coalesce into something new. In the Outer Rim, resistance movements against the Zorvans gained momentum. Inspired by humanity's resilience, they launched their own campaigns for freedom. Humanity didn't intervene directly, but they offered resources, training, and diplomatic support, becoming the center of a growing coalition. A galactic summit. Months later, the first galactic summit was held on Titan. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss a future without Zorvan domination. The Zorvans, for the first time, attended as equals, not overlords. Carter addressed the assembly. This summit is not about revenge. It's about building a future where no species is crushed by the weight of another's ambition. We stand here today not to divide, but to unite. The summit concluded with the formation of the Galactic Accord, a treaty aimed at ensuring mutual respect and cooperation among species. The Zorvans, though reluctant, signed the accord, acknowledging that their era of domination was over. A new role for humanity. As humanity's influence grew, so did their responsibilities. The United Earth Alliance became a central force in maintaining peace, mediating disputes, and fostering technological and cultural exchanges across the galaxy. The once isolated species of Earth had become a cornerstone of a new galactic order. Carter, now hailed as a hero across countless worlds, reflected on humanity's journey. Standing aboard the Eclipse, he gazed at the stars, his expression both proud and contemplative. We started this journey fighting for survival, he said to Admiral Lin. Now we're fighting for something bigger, a galaxy where no one has to face what we did. Lin nodded. The Zorvans learned that strength isn't everything. Maybe the galaxy will too. The legacy of the war. The Zorvan Empire, though no longer a dominant power, adapted to its new role in the galaxy. General Exuvar retired from military service, choosing instead to advocate for reform within his people. He became a rare figure in Zorvan history, a leader who acknowledged defeat not as failure, but as a lesson. Humanity, once viewed as insignificant, became a symbol of hope. Their story was told across the stars, inspiring future generations to believe in the power of resilience and unity. And so, the galaxy entered a new era, not one of empires and conquests, but of cooperation and understanding. The scars of war remained, but so did the lessons it taught. In the vastness of space, humanity had not just survived. It had thrived, proving that even in the darkest moments, there is a light that refuses to fade.